we're good. All right. This has been really cool, this backpacks thing, because some people have taken it into their businesses, into their schools, different places, you know, and I'm going to talk about that this morning because I really think it's a cool idea that I think has gotten butchered a little bit in Christian circles. And what I mean by that is, you know how some of you have heard of this before. I say this a lot. I say Jesus was countercultural, okay? But a lot of us, when we say that, a lot of us heard the thing where it says, we've been set apart. And I've heard a lot of Christians, when they say we've been set apart, to me, it has like a distancing effect. Like somehow, because we're supposed to be holy, which is true, that we remove ourselves and we step back from society. You know, and when Jesus said that we are, what's the verse? It says, we're in the world, but we're not of the world. A lot of people have put those two things, we're supposed to be set apart, and then they hold that verse up. And I'm sitting there going, I'm not sure that's what it means. I think that, yeah, of course we're in the world, right? But when it says we're not to be of the world, that's what I mean when I say it's countercultural. There's certain systems in this world, living in America, that we're supposed to do this, like the American dream. This is the way we're supposed to operate. And we actually can become just drones, right? And Jesus is saying, no, I've come to give you a whole new way of living. And it's built on love. It's built on generosity. It's built on compassion. It's not built on removing ourselves. You know, but so many times when I hear that, I hear people saying, well, we're not of this world, so we're not going to, and it's almost like we're not going to get our hands dirty. We're not going to go into those places where I think if Jesus were alive today, he would be at. He'd be getting his hands dirty, because that's how he did it when he was here. When he lived his life, he lived in such a way that was countercultural, and he was busting up the systems of the day. They were stuck this is how they operated, and this is all they saw. And it's the same thing for us today. If we're not careful, we will just become like everyone else, and it's the rat race. So when we're talking about this series called Simple Living, this is what I'm trying to expose us a little bit. Expose the systems, expose the things that we get caught up in. And last week we talked about the idea of time. And I just simply wanted to, it was like an emotional plea to you to say, hey, we get one life. How are you going to live it? And I wanted to tug on your heartstrings last week. I wanted to do anything I could to motivate you and inspire you and say, we got to get out of this thing of we just exist. And we just go. And we don't take time to really reflect on why we're doing what we're doing. And so this morning, we're going to be talking about relationships. And I think they go hand in hand because this idea of what's really important in life, right? I think all of us would say we can get better at our relationships. And when we think of that, most of us think about our immediate family and our friends, maybe our coworkers, maybe our neighbors. And I think all of us would say, yeah, I could get better at that. I don't have enough time to spend with X, Y, or Z. Oh, I wish if I only had more time, I would do this and I would do that with the people that I love the most. And sometimes we even feel guilty about it, right? Because it's like, as a father, I could guilt myself and be like, gosh, I wish I spent more time with my kids. Or as a husband, I wish I spent more time with my wife. And those are all true. But what I hope to do is kind of like talk about that aspect of it, but then shift. Because I think most pastors and most teachers would just focus on that one aspect, and I think that we're missing it if we do that. There's this whole other thing about relationships. When it says, love your neighbor as yourself, this idea of being missional is key. Okay? So of course, yes, God, I think, wants us to take care of our families, our friends, that sort of thing. But then I think in addition to that, we got to break out and say, how can we live a missional life? And we'll talk, what does that mean? What does that look like? We have a Bible reading, so I'd like to start with that. Did anyone take it? Do we know? Is it still there in the back? If anyone would like to do the reading, is it back there? All right. Go for it. I don't care. Whoever wants to do it.
It's on the clipboard.
Okay.
Is it on the board
I
itself?
changed it. It's on a clipboard
Oh, perfect.
instead of pin.
Please stand as you are able for the reading of God's Word. Philippians 2, 3 through 4. If you've gotten anything at all out of following Christ, if His love has made any difference in your life, if being in a community of the Spirit means anything to you, if you have a heart, if you care, then do me a favor. Agree with each other. Love each other. Be deep-spirited friends. Don't push your way to the front. Don't sweet-talk your way to the top. Put yourself aside and help others get ahead. Don't be obsessed with getting your own advantage. Forget yourselves long enough to lend a helping hand. May God add His blessing to the reading, hearing, and doing of His Word. Amen.
Thank you. You may be seated. So, I've been reading this book that Sarah had given to me. It's called The Simple Life. And a lot of the concepts that we're talking about are found in this book. So I wanted to read it to you because this goes under the umbrella of that we would all hunger for having better relationships. You know, like I think any of us in this room could look at it and say, I wish I had a better relationship with, and fill in the blank. Do you have the index cards? If we could pass those out, that would be awesome. I'm going to read to you this thing. When I saw this, I started laughing because I was like, I think it captures it pretty well. So it says, a hunger exists for healthier relationships, not only between husbands and wives, but also among fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, friends, and co-workers. Look at some of the comments from our surveys. It says, I would love for our family to spend more time together instead of needing to work so much and sending our son to daycare. I wish we could manage our time so that we could spend more weekends together. I don't feel that I know my husband anymore. With our schedules, we hardly even have time to talk. I wish I had just one friend I could talk to anytime. I need better relationships with my stepchildren. They really resent me. We are constantly on the go due to our children's sporting events, and we hardly have any quality time together. We are gone from home almost every night of the week. Guilty. I have lots of people and family around me, but I'm so lonely. I'm hoping that kind of encapsulates all of us to some level. This is what happens if we're not careful. If we don't be absolutely diligent in reminding ourselves what's most important to us. So I wanted to share with you a quick story because this hits me every single time I've ever heard anyone talk on the subject of being a father or being a parent. That it always does something to my heart. It doesn't matter, like, I don't know, it's like funny, like I could be watching a TV show and if it's a commercial about a father-son thing, it's like, I just not get tears going, right? And I remember a time I was sitting at a leadership summit. I was just talking about this idea of like going after that which is important to you. And he was highlighting the idea of family. And many of you know my story. I told you that my parents were divorced when I was 1. And I struggled with that growing up, even though I had a really, really good childhood. But I remember being 13 years old, so 12 years later, and that time I shared with you last week that I was in the hospital. I remember my mom and dad, and they get along great. They're here today. It's awesome. And they did a great job of being amicable and all that stuff. And so I felt like they provided us a great childhood. But I remember when I was in the hospital, when I was sick, and my parents would be there every day. They did shifts, right? So I can't remember which one, who had the day shift, who had the night shift, but it was like that, right? And there would be that time when they were both there at the same time to say, you know, it's kind of like the handoff. And so we're in the room together, just the three of us, and I can remember saying to them, are you guys getting back together? Are we going to be a family again? You know, like, it was surprising to me even, because I'm sitting, wow, 12 years, I had already kind of adjusted to that, and yet in a very vulnerable moment, right, when I was paralyzed, the very thing that I felt like I had lost, I wanted desperately back. So then, and I think this is obviously why whenever someone talks about parenting and family, that I get emotional. And so when Diane and I got together, it was like very, very important to me to say, no matter what, you know, we take the vows very seriously. There's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times, but we got to be willing to fight it out. And just no matter what. And then you have kids, and you sit there and go, like, you know, we're all busy, we all work, not all, but you know what I mean, like a lot of us have a lot of hours that we're putting in, and I was no different. So in the early years, I was working full-time, and I was going to school full-time at night. And it was just very, very busy. And then you're trying to manage, like, oh, well, what about, you know, my hobbies, and just trying to stay in shape, go to the gym, right? And there's only so much time in the day. And during those early years, Diane was doing a lot of all the parenting, because I was never home. And so, again, when this guy did this talk, it just ripped at me, you know? And it was like, it always became this, like, Sean, are you really pursuing that which is most important? And working for the church is interesting, because you're supposed to, like, this is supposed to be a good thing, right? You're helping do good. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm spending a lot of time doing that, and I'm not doing a lot of that in my house. You know, so there's that balancing act that all of us have to figure out. And what I want to say to you today is this. I might not be hitting on your hot button, but I want to say this. This is who I am. I'm married, so I'm going to talk about that relationship. I'm a parent, I talk about that relationship. If you're single, if it's your best friend, if it's your relationship with your cousin, if it's your relationship with a coworker, whatever your scenario is, I want you to live in that. Like, go into that and say, all right, as whatever role you're playing, what relationship do you want to work on? Because life is just taking you over. Whatever it is. Because we have to press back against it. If we don't, we're just never going to get to that. It just won't happen. Our culture is such that if we go into it, we run the rat race. And I love that image, because don't you just feel like that stupid little mouse on that wheel, right? And I'm like, that's stupid if you think about it. Like, if you put yourself on that wheel, right? I think God sometimes laughs at us and goes, you're just like the rat, you're just like the mouse. And yet you think that's, you know, that's who we are when we're just going. And we lose sight of the things that are most important to us. So this morning, I hope that you'll reflect on what's important to you. And I don't know, I just feel like I want to read this to you. I think this is, maybe it's because it hits me right square in the eyes, but I think it'll hit a lot of you too. This is a story of a person. This lady's named Evelyn. She's 34 years old. And she and her husband Jared, they have 3 kids. Evelyn had recently taken a new job with the city's newspaper. Every day we are swamped. From the time we try to get our kids ready for school until the time they finally fall asleep, life is nonstop. Our youngest just started his first year of T-ball. Don't start your kids in T-ball, whatever you do. You'll regret it for the rest of your life. All right, I'm just kidding, some of you diehard fans, all right. If I could give you any pastoral advice, don't start him in T-ball! Sidebar, we started Jenna in the version girls softball of this, and it was the worst, it was the most horrific thing. There was the only time in my life I said, we gotta quit. We gotta quit. You know, it's like, please take her out, whatever you do. All the girls get up there, and every girl, every inning gets to bat. I'm like, what is going on here? They don't play by the rules. It's like, they could have got 5 outs, 10 outs, they're all gonna go up, they're all gonna go to first, you can hit it a country mile, stop at first, you hit it 3 feet, go to, you know, it's like, this is nuts, right? And my daughter, she never played softball ever again. All right, sorry about that. I'm on the soapbox. Our youngest just started his first year of T-ball, so now we have 3 children in 3 separate leagues. Anyone? Can I get an amen? It's a logistical nightmare. I don't even want to think about when the baseball season starts overlapping with soccer. And of course, it's not just the kids. Jared and I are really dedicated to our careers. Evelyn had always tried to put a positive spin on their busy lives. You ever do that? The kids were developing and getting opportunities. Their own careers were progressing. But these good things had come at a cost. They were losing control. Jared and I don't really spend much time with our children. See, I'll get emotional. And I miss the times when Jared and I would go out together, just the two of us. I miss dates. I couldn't tell you the last time we did something like that together. Unfortunately, because of the role that I play, I hear a lot of these stories. I've heard people say, I haven't gone on a date in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. Or, I haven't been on a date since we had children. Evelyn looked at her watch. I've got to go. I have to pick up my oldest child from practice. Jared should be on his way to pick up the youngest. And with a half smile and a head nod, she was gone. That, to me, is a real picture of many of our lives. If we're not careful, that will become our existence. So my questions to you, Will, I think I have them on there. You don't have to answer all of them, but how many of you relate to this story? How many of you have wanted to make a change, but have not yet made it a reality? And then if you had the boldness, explain why. Meaning, what happens that prevents you from making the change? Are you still willing to try, or are you stuck thinking it's not possible? So if anyone, maybe 1 or 2, 3 people, could take a shot at any of these, maybe the last 2 questions there. Because what I'm getting at is, I think all of us, if we all resonate with that story to a certain level, then we've all, as smart people, have tried to do something about it, right? So some of us have figured it out. Some of us continue to, maybe we get it right and then we get it wrong. We get it right, we get it wrong. And some of us have maybe stopped trying. So I'm just curious to see if anyone wants to kind of explain a process that you've gone through, a good or bad. I don't care. Like we talk about being a real church all the time. So this could be a real ugly story. It could be a really nice story. All right, good. Don't be too good, though.
For people that have little kids, especially, my husband and I didn't have a lot of money, so we would put a movie on upstairs for them, order them a pizza, and I would make something, scampi, lobster, whatever, and we would have a nice dinner downstairs. They weren't allowed to come down. It was our date night, and they stayed upstairs and watched a movie and had pizza and soda. All a bunch of stuff they weren't allowed to have, candy, whatever. And they would put themselves to bed, and that was our date night. But it was just something that was one night a week that was just for us, or maybe once or twice a month. So it's just something if you can't get out of the house, but you feel like you're doing something you shouldn't.
Anyone wrestle with it that would be willing to share how you've been wrestling with it, or maybe you used to wrestle with it and you're making progress? Anyone want to risk it a little bit? I'm the one that's always bearing my heart and soul, flying like a fool up here.
I come from it at a different angle, or come at it from a different angle. Now I have raised my children, and they're all on their own. And my husband and I have had challenges along the way, which has allowed me or made me have to work harder at the almost ripe old age of time to retire. So, and what I'm finding myself in is in a different bracket of employment, where what used to be is no longer, because the computerized technology has taken over and my body is not computer savvy. So what has happened is I've basically taken a new job, and I have 5 grandchildren who I adore, and want to spend every minute of my life with them. And my children, who I enjoy. But I am working, I leave the house at 7:30 in the morning, and I literally do not get home from an 8-hour job until 9 o'clock at night, because I am struggling so hard to try to stay employed and to keep up with the younger kids that just know it better. Now, I'm good at what I do. I'm a physical therapist, but the problem is the documentation and all the societal issues and restraints that have been put on it are wearing me down. And I don't know what to do except try to get out of this. I'm trying to pay down my bills so that I can work less and enjoy more. But it's a catch-22, and I really am in that struggle.
Marilyn is my only friend over here. That's what we always say, we're each other's only friend. I raised 4 children, and yes, they went to T-ball, and I hated every second of it. You know, it was bad, but I got through it. But I think what took me by surprise is I thought when I reached retirement that, okay, now you sit back and, oh, everything's wonderful, and then you find out Social Security sucks because you can't live on it. And so I find myself, similar to Marilyn, working 40 hours a week, working 3 12-hour days, and just about making ends meet. And I'm 67, so I keep thinking, okay, when is my retirement gonna come? And it creates, like, you want to be cynical about it, but you know you can't, and you want to be bitter about it, and you know you can't, because Christ in me, the hope of glory, is better than all of this. But it's still a problem. It still is a problem, and I'm sure there's a lot of older people that have this same problem. Retirement isn't retirement, you know. So now I'm hoping to work only till I'm 70, but at 70, who knows? I may have to go another 5 years. But yeah, it is a problem.
Any young families want to try? No, nothing against the chronologically blessed. Anyone in the throes of it right now that with young families that would want to share maybe the tension?
I have 10-year-old twins, and I feel like it's me most of the time. I find that you have to see life through their eyes in order to coach them through life. And you really get wrapped up in trying to make the best of their life. I find that with Christine and myself, you know, what we give them are the things that we want as kids. So we end up living life through them. And we neglect ourselves a lot because by 9 o'clock, Christine's like, I'm beat. You know, and I'm like, I'm not. You know, but, you know, it's life. You know, you get worn down by it. 5 days a week, and then 7 Saturdays soccer all day, and you know, so I think it's hard to break away and like focus on husband-wife relationships, the date nights, because at the end of the day, we're all tired.
You know, it's interesting when Sarah shared the other day about her trip in Haiti. I thought it was interesting because she said she couldn't even find time to spend time with Wayne, right? But she could go to Haiti, and I don't mean that as a shot either. But I'm trying to make a point. You know what I heard? What I heard was like, we can carve out time. We can even carve out time to spend a week in Haiti. We can carve out time to go on a date night. We can. Will we is a different but we can. See what I'm saying? And so that's what I'm trying to say, is like, we gotta fight against the culture, because the culture will say, get those kids in all these sports and get, you know, and as good parents, we want the best for our kids and all that, and there's that tension of that, right? Like, I'm not, oh, maybe I'm not giving my kids enough, that makes it me, I'm not a good parent, that sort of thing. There's a lot of realities there.
I'm Kate, and I'm a T-ball mom.
I love you, Kate.
Hi, Kate.
We'll pray for you.
It can get very overwhelming with all the kids' activities, but I also find just in my professional life, I'm at a point where it's very hard for me to say no. I feel like the more that you do at work, the more that people expect you to do, to join certain committees, and I've been involved with my union and, you know, writing a newsletter for work and on the strategic plan. And there were some weeks that, I mean, I was out almost every single night, and then leaving the burden on Chris to get the kids to their activities, and then coming home and just being too tired to engage at all with my family. So I am trying. I've stepped back from everything. This past month, I just said, you know what, I'm gonna focus on work and my family and myself, and that's going to be it. But that's a really hard decision to make, and I feel a lot of guilt because I feel like I've let down people who are counting on me at work to pick up all the slack on these extra things. So it's taken the joy out of stepping back because I feel like I've let so many people down. So I'm struggling with that.
Thank you for sharing that.
Actually, I have
Just
something.
mute that mic. Oh.
She's gotta do- Oh, can I have the mic?
Really bad. I didn't mean it.
I want to be sure everybody can hear them.
It's not. But it was kind of funny because you did kind of throw me on the spot. But that is I just want to follow up. There's one more chapter in that story. So the first chapter is it is hard. Since we had Zuri 5 years ago, it's been hard for us to get away for a weekend. We've done it, but it's taken a lot of effort. And a lot of it is my intentionality about it, and I had to realize that. Because when I went to Haiti for 5 days, I don't know how that happened, but I got it all coordinated in 2 hours.
Yeah.
But there was also a very strong like intentionality on my part, and like just willingness to go with the plan. And now, so the next chapter is this weekend, coming up next weekend. Wayne and I are going to go do a Spartan race, and we're going to stay overnight in Boston. And we have my mom's going to come watch Zuri. And I'm actually already struggling with my mom having to come from New York and stay over with Zuri. I've actually gone back and forth on it a couple times. And I think what I'm struggling with is the value of me going away. It feels like I'm going away just for me. Versus like Haiti, like anyone will get behind you if you're going to Haiti to help out, you know, a hurricane just hit, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, everyone and their brother wants to be part of that and help you out. And everyone offered to take care of Zuri, take care of the cats, like everyone was taken care of. But I also had no problem asking for help because it was such a, you know, not for me kind of cause. So like that's something I've had to reflect on in my own heart, you know. So now for me asking people to watch her so I can go with my husband, I feel like is more just for me. Although it is very important, but it's just been like, why don't I value it, but then I don't act like I value it. And why is it so hard to do, you know, like it's easy to justify something for work, it's easy to justify something for the church, or to help someone in a third world country, you know, a group of people. But it's really hard for me to justify it if it's just for me. In a good, you know, self-help kind of way.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but this is part of it.
It's a tension to manage.
That's gotta be a very common thing.
Yeah.
My wife has that too, so that, I bet you that's very common.
I
I
think
do it for others, but I won't take it for myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I'm not making this a gender thing, but I do think there is the scales are weighed there. With women have, because of the nurturing, how they're wired that way, I think it's very difficult. And I just think it's something that to be aware of, because you're ultimately going to feel guilty about stuff, you know? And that's why I'm saying we have to convince ourselves of these values. Like when you were sharing, Kay, I felt like there always will be resistance, there'll be critics, there'll be naysayers, there'll be your own self-leadership stuff that we have to work through, because the guilt of that, like I really liked what you said, because I feel like it captures a battle that goes on. Whenever we try to make a change, there will be resistance. And that's why we have to kind of keep coming back to the scriptures and allowing the values of the scriptures to say we are called to be missional. We are called to be countercultural, and we have to give ourselves permission to do that. And even though it won't feel right, you know what I mean? And a lot of times we might let our feelings control us versus the values or the priorities. And so that's something that we have to continually work toward. And again, that's why the value of community is very important, that we can encourage each other and support each other. You can bounce it off people, right? And say, no, it's okay, you know, like we're in this together, we'll work through it. This is obviously a series that impacts all of us tremendously. And so if we can help, you know, I hope if we can just move a little bit, that would be huge. So on your index card, this is my quick.
Can I just say one thing? For all you young families that are struggling to keep all stuff, it gets easier. It really does. I mean, my youngest is now 50. We have a kid in high school, two children in high school, and one in college. It gets easier. It does. It's crazy when they're 5 and 6, but now I have one that's driving, and I'm not an Uber taxi cab anymore. Just go to the games and enjoy watching these guys, watching my boys and Charlotte boys and all these boys. Just doing their thing now. I feel like the hard work is almost done. We put a good foundation for these kids, and now we can go back and just cheer for them and watch it. It gets easier. It really does.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Kevin, too, but then I was like, how could I say that right after Ruth? No, but I was going to make the point that there's phases in life. There are stages that we go through that some are just more demanding than others, and I agree. That's why I said, I don't think I was doing anything wrong when I was going to school full time. We had 3 kids, right? It was a crazy time, but I also wouldn't take it back. You know what I mean? Those were worthwhile endeavors. But in light of that, we still have to, how can you still do that and carve out time? And I'm not trying to put myself as a hero when I say this, but it's there was a time when I wasn't playing basketball for 8 years, right? I wasn't going to fish as often, right? Because I recognized that this season, it wouldn't have been fair to Diane, and now I get to play basketball all the time. To your point, right? It does, because the kids are in a different place. So I appreciate you sharing that, because there is realities to that, right? Where just certain phases are going to be more difficult than others. But I guess my point is, even in those difficult phases, still look to prioritize that marriage. Still look to be missional, which I'm going to transition into now. But on your index card, just one relationship, we could probably all write down 5 people's names these relationships I wish I could get better at. Just pick one, please. If you could write it down in your card. What's the one person that you would like to better that relationship? So if you could put that down in your card. And then I want you to, if you don't capture this morning, at least go, and this will be hopefully your action step when you leave here. But after you know that person, whoever that person is, I want you to think about that are going well in that relationship. You know what I mean? Because sometimes when we do a teaching like this, it's woe is me, everything's bad. And I'm not trying to do that. But at the same time, bring some reality to it. So what we do, when you say, these are the 3 things that I see is working well in this relationship, whether you're struggling with your kids, right? As a parent, my kids are struggling. What are the 3 things that you see good in them, though? My marriage is struggling. What's the 3 things you see good in your spouse? Because what that does is causes you to have to stop and get your head out of what you see as the bad things and say, wait, no, there's still 3 great qualities in my kids. There's still 3 great qualities in my spouse. And we have to kind of remind ourselves of those qualities. If the relationship allows you to do more than 3, great. If I'm doing marriage counseling, I always say come up with 10, because you want to bless your spouse. You want to encourage your spouse and say, these 10 things I love about you, and I'm so glad that you're doing this, this, and this, and blah, 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 right? So the more the better, okay? Now, this is where it gets tougher. Write down one thing that you've been doing that's not helping the relationship. Because I got to take ownership. My choices impact the relationships that I'm in. So what's one thing that I'm doing that I need to stop, right? Because I've started getting overwhelmed. I started only seeing the bad. And so there's a behavior, there's something in me that I have to stop that will help this relationship to get better. So write down one thing. Again, we probably could list 10, just list one. And then the positive side of that is Write down one thing that you're going to start doing today. Remember, tomorrow never comes. What's the one thing I'm going to do today that will make a difference in this relationship? And it doesn't have to be huge. It could be write a letter. It could be pick up the phone. It could be send a text. It could go out for a cup of coffee. It could be, maybe I need to apologize. Maybe I need to go on a date night. Maybe, I don't care what it is, but you think about that. Write it down on your index card. What's the one thing that you will do today? You can write it down today and put a time on it because you can't go on the date night or whatever today, right? But what's the one thing you'll do to get it moving in the right direction? Okay? To me, if the struggle is real, this is a very, very practical way of making a change in our lives. So, oh boy. Anyone know what the definition of insanity is? Say it again. All right, how many of us are insane? Right? So here I am. I'm trying to challenge us to say, let's stop that one thing that we just keep doing over and over again, expecting a different result. I'm insane, so I'm going to stop doing that one thing. And because I don't want to be insane, I'm going to start doing one thing that will make it better. That's what I'm trying to get us to do. If you get that into a practice and you keep doing that and keep choosing one thing, I would think that relationship will get better. All right. So like I told you earlier, that could be the teaching and be done. And it is. It's a good thing. It's a great thing to stress that, those personal relationships that we're in. But the Bible takes it further than that. There's an expectation that Christ died for a reason. That he wanted to bring his kingdom and to change the world. And that we are the plan A, if you will. And so he's relying on us to be love, to be compassion, to be forgiveness, to be grace, to be generosity. Right? And so this idea of love your neighbor is relationships. That's why I'm including it in here. But, now, all right, this is going to sound terrible. How many of us, we just got through talking about how many of us struggle with just that. Just trying to get the home front in order, let's say it that way. Or if, our friendship. We're just trying to get that in order, and we're like, wow, it's so hard to do. And now here's this crazy guy asking me to go beyond that. And I am. Because that's vitally important. We need to do that. But if we don't ever get to the place where we're impacting other people's lives outside of ourselves, if we're not noticing the needs around us, if we're not pushing back on the systems, if we're not doing any of those things, are we really living out the kingdom? Are we really being countercultural? Because what I just described is everyone in our culture is trying to figure that out. I don't know how many people are trying to take it to the next step and saying we are called, we're commanded to love our neighbor. These are the two great commandments. So this isn't like a suggestion. If this movement, if you will, we talked about that Jesus was a revolutionary. He's trying to establish a new way of life. If this is going to happen, how are you and me, how are we going to impact other people's lives that otherwise would not be touched? That's outside of our family. That's outside of ourselves. So in light of time, I'm not going to go into a discussion point. I was going to just talk about this idea of what does it mean to you to be missional? Because all of us, when I say be missional, I'm sure we conjure up different ideas. Hopefully, in my last few minutes here, I'll be able to explain that. I always like to use Jesus as a model whenever I can. So I started really thinking about that. I was like, what types of relationships did he have? Right? Because I'm sitting there going, he got a lot done in 3 years. You know what I mean? If you think about it, his public ministry was only 3 years. So how did he spend his time? That's an interesting question. If you had 3 years to go, what are the things you would put aside, right? And you wouldn't feel guilty about because I got 3 years to make sure this mission happens. I got to make sure that this kingdom gets established. I got to make sure that this church gets launched off and they get it. Because these 12 guys, they weren't the best package. You know what I'm saying? They were not the ideal people that you would choose. They were the leftovers. Truly, they were the leftovers. They weren't good enough to have a rabbi. So they were refused. That's why they went back to fishing and the different things. They weren't special enough. They weren't smart enough. They weren't good enough. But Jesus saw something in them and said, I can change the world with you if you'll get this new kingdom. And so, who did Jesus spend his time with? The first one I put, and this sounds terrible, but I'm just going to say, he spent time with the quote-unquote less than and the looked down upon. And you know what, this sounds even worse because of our day and age, but children back in those days were looked down upon. It's kind of like it is today in China. Okay, like, you understand what I'm saying there? Like there's a real dilemma here in China, how they treat their kids. This is how it was back in that day when they were doing this. So when Jesus said, let the children come to me, that was a huge statement. And the disciples were like, whoa, no, don't let the kids, what are you doing? And women back in the day, this is obviously a controversial statement today, but women back in that day were less than. And Jesus went out of his way to go up against that system, to fight against that. And it's so funny to me, like he was fighting for women's rights. He was fighting for children's rights. He was fighting for those that were different, right? So the Samaritans, the ones that the Israelites despised. Jesus said, no, we're going to love the Samaritan woman. I love that. It was like a double one. So Jesus was always going into situations, and it was almost like he purposely did it. I don't usually do that. Like, if it happens, I'm like, all right, I'll try to deal with it. But I don't like, let me go into this place where it's going to be hard. And God, I'm choosing to go through the pain. You know what I mean? Like, go ahead, throw the lashes on me. This is going to be great. Sign me up. Jesus did, though. He went into it. And then he hung out with sinners and tax collectors. And this is why I'm telling us, remember I talked about the 3 forms of community. It's not just this group of people, the people that believe the same way we do, and think the same way we do, and look the same way we do. It's going beyond that. And then I also said he did spend time with the 12 disciples, and I think there's a whole nother talk, but there's a mentor-mentee relationship that I think all of us should be in. I think every one of us should have a mentor, and I think every one of us should be given into a mentee. It's a model. He spent most of his time meeting needs around him. If you study his life, every day, it seems like to me anyways, when he woke up, he was on mission. He was on purpose. And he went out, and it was always about the other. And it was about the kingdom. But he also had friends. I thought this was interesting, because he talked about his relationship with Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And just had good times with them, it seems like in Scripture to me. He was affected when Lazarus was dead, right? When he found out the news that his friend died. You can feel the emotional loss there. And he raises them. It's nice if Jesus, you just raise them back to life. That's a great thing. Your friend dies, you're like, come back. Get up, Lazarus. Let's hang out some more. That's a good thing. And he hung out with Peter, James, and John. I think, there's a special relationship there. Let me take our last few minutes, and I'm going to share with you a story from Luke 7. It's a long one, so I'm not going to read it off the screen. But it's the story of Jesus, Simon, who was a Pharisee, and a prostitute. And the prostitute, we don't even know her name. It reflects that day. And I think it's purposely done for us to have to wrestle with today. And what I want you to see is a lot of times when we hear this story, this was, Jesus went to the Pharisee's home. A Pharisee was someone who was like the religious leaders of the day. And it seems to me anyways that Jesus purposely went there. I found that to be fascinating. Why would he do that? I think he's going into it. I'm going to disrupt the system. I'm going to disrupt what Pharisees are all about, what they think the kingdom is about. Right? They were trying to live by the law. They were trying to do everything right. But they were missing that people part. So I think he's going in there, and I think Simon seemed to allow him to come into his house, probably was like, I have a question. He wanted to see if he was a prophet, the way he'd been hearing about it. But then this unexpected visitor shows up, this prostitute. And I want you to think with me for a second. Some of you in this room feel the weight of this. And others of us might know people or see people out there that are living the reality of this. My point is, when you don't love yourself, like when I think about stripteasers and I think about prostitutes and I think about those types of folks, they're all special people. all people that God loves. But somewhere in life, they got lost. And they stopped loving themselves. And why aren't we, this is what I mean by being countercultural. Well, let's set ourselves apart. Don't ever have a conversation with a prostitute. God forbid. Now, there's wisdom there, of course. But if we're not going to reach into the places that no one else will reach, how are they ever going to know love? Love the unlovable. The scripture says it's easy to love those that you get along with that look like you and everything like that. But who's gonna risk it? Who's going to go out and love those who have given up on life? One of the things I love Diane did years ago, she spent time with the women at the ACI. And that's all she talked about when she came home, the stories of these women, the real life stories of women. And they just came in to give them dignity. Just came in to listen to them, to learn their story, to love on them. And I would suggest, Diane's an introvert, in her small way, she planted so many seeds of love and dignity and self-worth in these women's lives. She carved out time to make that happen. She put it all on me, little sucker. Every Tuesday night. Yeah, right, you believe that for a minute. She cooked everything, cleaned everything, then she went. And I was like, kids, go to bed. That was my job. But that was a choice in the midst of life, in the midst of a family. But there's people that need me. There's people who don't love themselves. So when Jesus is going into Simon's house, a Pharisee who tried to get it all right, he's saying the one thing you're missing is this person. You don't even see her. You don't even notice her. And ever since I came in, the story says that she came weeping because of the love of Jesus Christ. Because of his forgiveness, her life was radically changed. And these are two kingdoms colliding. That's what I want you to see. The kingdom of that day, the culture of that day, with this new way of living, this new kingdom. Boom, in this one room. Jesus, Simon, prostitute. Do you see it? Two kingdoms coming together, colliding. One, you just want to get it right. And you're so caught up in wondering if I'm a prophet that you haven't even welcomed me into your home. Back in those days, they washed your feet and they gave you a kiss on the cheek. That's what good hospitality was. When Jesus came in, Simon didn't do that. When the prostitute came in, she threw herself at his feet and with her tears washed his feet. She poured oil on his feet. She couldn't stop kissing his feet. These are all symbols of signs of a changed life. Someone who cared enough to notice me, to see me, and to love me for who I am and where I'm at today. I wasn't going to say that, but last night we watched a video. And there was a guy who's an entrepreneur. His vision, just so you know, his vision was to start 100,000, to change 100,000 communities by starting 100,000 churches. That's a pretty big vision. He's already done 33,000 of them. He showed a picture of a homeless person in India. And the picture itself just breaks your heart. He's decrepit, he's laying there like this, out in the streets, unclean, unkept. And he goes, he's now CEO of this whole region. He oversees this whole region. Because someone stopped and had a conversation and saw something good in him. And said, yeah, your situation got you here, but I see you got so much inside of you to give. And he reached into that person's life. And they spent 12 months together, living together, to get him back on his feet. So there was this investment. That's countercultural. That's Jesus-type kingdom living. I don't even want to make it up. I shouldn't have said that because sometimes I say these grandiose things. What about, to Kevin's point, spending your time coaching kids? What about, there's a kid that you know who's a foster child, doesn't have a lot to look forward to when he goes home, and you take him out for coffee every week. You call him on the phone every week. What are the little things that we can do that I'm telling you they might be little, but they'll go a long, long way? Oh my gosh. All right, sorry. I'll have to stop. let me leave you with this thought. The thing that changes lives isn't having our lives all together. The thing that changes lives is our willingness to go into another person's life and invest it. Just invest in that person. Encourage them, support them, love on them. And when we do that, we are being missional. We are being countercultural. And that will change a family, a community, a nation, etc. And it's up to us. Will we live countercultural? Will we carve out the time? Not only for our loved ones, so I hope we do that too. But then when we got that in order, let's also do at the same time, let's be missional. Let's pray. Jesus, I thank you that you have laid out a challenge before us, because it's not easy. And at the same time, there's different phases that we all go through, different stages that we all go through. And I ask that we would be creative, even in those chaotic times. Just try to figure out how to create a little more margin in our lives. How can we see the needs around us and then do something about it? In just very small ways. Help us to care a little bit more about the other. And help us to take care of our homes best that we can. In Jesus' name, amen. So do it, church. Write it down. You got your index card. If you need to do the backpacks, text me or email me or whatever. Have a great week.